What is up, guys? It's your boy Brandon Groves coming at you. And today, we're going to be talking about why high fidelity wireframes are not needed. So let's get into it. So real quick, if you guys are new to this channel, my name is Brandon Groves. I'm a self-taught designer. I work with large brands such as Disney, Dannon, and Huggies. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get into this material for today. In our industry, in UI, UX, we always seem to, the waterfall approach or process is, we have the UX researchers and we have the UI designers. And we split the two tasks between two different people to basically save time. So the UX researcher, they go ahead and they do the user research, do the user case studies, the user stories, user cases, etc. And then they offload the deliverables to the UI designers are things like wireframes, user flows, and the research that they've basically obtained. For this particular video, we're gonna focus on the wireframes. Through what I've seen and experienced, I feel like wireframes have taken up more time than need be in particular projects. With that said, you do not need to have high fidelity wireframes for your projects. They're not needed and they're not effective. So let me explain this. What a UX designer's deliverables are basically, once there's a kickoff meeting, the UX designer gets all the requirements, all the features needed, all the user cases and user stories, and we download that stuff into our brain and we basically kick out wireframes and user flows from these requirements, etc. So if we really think about this, wireframes aren't really necessarily needed. Most of the things that we are as UX designers or UX researchers, from the information we're gathering from this kickoff meeting of a project, we can basically solve a lot of things on paper. I feel like a lot of, just for cleanliness or presentation wise, we've gotten stuck in this presentation type mentality where we have to, the UX designers have to take what they've done on paper and then put it into some type of deck, some type of presentation that not only takes a lot of time, but also takes a lot of management and a lot of hours, because you have to build out the wireframes that you've done on paper. You have to also build out the user flows. The wireframes, you have the hours for creating the wireframes, you have the hours for editing the wireframes, you see? There's a lot of hours in that. Now, one thing that I personally use in my own workflow is UI kits. This has saved so much time. If I really do need to create a wireframe, I just download a UI kit for free. If you really want to be bougie, you can download a pretty nice one for a little bit of cash. You can download it and you basically just drag and drop where your content and how the hierarchy of a page or a screen would be. That's if you need to build out a wireframe. Those are really simple, those are easy. You just drag and drop how you feel the flow and the hierarchy of the page should be. There should not be a need to do any high fidelity wireframing. High fidelity wireframes are not needed or effective because we can use things such as UI kits to drag and drop our flows and our sketch wireframes digitally. And alternatively, this is what I want to basically get into your minds or pitch. Whenever we are presenting, or a UX designer or wireframes are being presented to a stakeholder, one of the main things I've continuously heard out of their mouths are, we either have to preface before we get into wireframes that these are not to be focused on the way they look. This is about the flow, the hierarchy, and content. So we have to preface that, and then once the presentation is done, or even during the presentation, most of these stakeholders are like very confused because they don't have context. And this is a very big hill of UX because the people that we're presenting to, they need context to understand what exactly we were talking about. We understand it as designers because we're in it 24/7. We understand what our intentions are, whereas a stakeholder does not. So it's very hard to present to stakeholders with wireframes. So what I'm proposing is basically to fast forward the wireframing process and get quicker into design. So what I'm proposing, a time saver for my personal work. I get right into my flows, do everything on paper. I understand my use cases, my requirements, my user stories, and I get straight into drawing stuff on paper, whiteboarding. Then I get into, as quickly as I can, design. Because stakeholders, always at the end, their number one question is, when can we get to the actual designs? When can I see this in context so it makes sense to me? The solution here to make things more quicker and to save time is to basically have UX designers or a designer quickly get all the use cases, all the requirements, put that down on paper, relay that to a designer. Either the designer or they both can come up with a quick solution with context to present to the stakeholders. And this really closes the time gap. This closes the time gap, saves time, it's more efficient because now there's less time on managing wireframes, there's less time on editing wireframes, and you can get into design and production a lot quicker. So timelines get condensed. Also, it helps with presentation. When the main person you're presenting to or trying to get to buy into your idea does not have context on the thing that you're trying to sell, it's going to be very, very difficult to sell on those things. Like with ideas. If someone just tells you your idea or their idea without context, you're like, well, what? Exactly. So the same thing goes with this process. Have UX designers come with the requirements and everything, user case studies, the research, come together with the designer, come up with a solution that is high fidelity designed rather than wireframes, and then quickly get into that first meeting with the client with context and be able to present this thing that is sped up and get buy-in from the client and move this process straight into production. This is all about closing that gap, saving time up front, and allowing for more time if needed from both the UX designer and designer to create a more creative product, because less time is focused on making boxes that can be done on paper and talked about with the designer you're working on that project with. Shorten the time for wireframes, collaborate with your designer, create something that is high fidelity designed, get in front of your stakeholders with context so that they understand, they buy into your idea, and then you can quickly get into production. This is all about saving time. This is about efficiency. So with that, guys, very simple. This is what I'm proposing, that less time on wireframes allows designers and companies to create a more creative product, because the time that would be used on wireframes are now used in collaboration to create a more creative product. And you can have the two heads, the UX designer and the designer, together to create something high fidelity to bring to that first sit down meeting with the stakeholders, have the stakeholders to have context rather than gray boxes and lines, and then get them to buy into the idea early on, get into production, and then out the door. So with that, guys, very short video. Let me know in the comments what you think about this process. What do you guys think about wireframes? Yay or nay? This is a topic that I'm really interested in, because at my agency, we still have separation of UI and UX designers, and we do have a very separate approach. But in my own personal work, it's almost a fluid one. And again, some projects will have to have wireframes and some may not. It's not a binary yes or no. It's always based on, what's best for this project. So definitely keep that in mind, but also keep in mind, how can you be efficient? How can you save time and put hours where they are better allocated? So with that, guys, drop in the comments what you think, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Brandon Gross, self-taught designer, out.